Hello, and welcome to another episode of Out of the Fire podcast, where we talk about fire, AI, all kinds of interesting things, and have interesting people on. And this week we have Kerry Weinberg, which we just met. Like, what was that? A couple of weeks ago? We just got
Yeah.
for the first time. But Kerry and I have a lot of things in common, kind of career wise, and kind of went through the same things. And you were at League. For a long time, responsible for their analytics.
Yeah, I was the VP data at League. I joined in 21 and then was there until middle of 23.
Now you have a company called Phenomenal. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just phenomenal.
That's right.
It's a phenomenal company.
That's right.
Okay. So so Kerry is a AI expert and particular in healthcare analytics, which obviously in healthcare, everything is contextual, right? So like if you're an AI expert, do you really know what you're talking about unless you understand the subject matter expertise? Like unless you actually have worked with the data. So like if you're just coming in, like you're open AI and you want to do all this stuff with healthcare, do you need to like have expertise around that?
Well, I would say, I don't know if this is the most accurate thing to say, but I don't know that anyone's a real expert in AI, especially where LLMs are at today. I think they are evolving in ways that are much more similar to biology, which is very exciting. I think that there's pros and cons actually to applying AI in healthcare, whether you have domain background and expertise and whether you don't. I think there's often value to having folks that come from different perspectives. When I was at Amgen, our AI team, we had a range of different folks from different backgrounds. So we had mathematician, we had folks that came from pure CS background, we had folks that came from biological engineering, chemical engineering. I think something really special happens when you have people that merge from different disciplines. I think what can be very helpful in healthcare if you're applying to AI is sort of like knowing where you're going to have missteps. A big difference between applying AI in a traditional software setting using software data generated from software systems versus data generated from humans is that data generated from humans is inherently going to be way more stochastic, and there's almost like you learn a story of what happened to someone's health when you look through different electronic health record data, for example, or clinical trial data or patient reported outcomes or whatnot. You're kind of inferring the story. In a traditional sort of software system, let's say I'm building like product analytics software, for different consumer applications, it's more predictable behavior. You're controlling what information you're collecting inherently. There's less of a reliance on a human to actually enter that information. You can measure click-through rate. You can measure how long someone's going to scroll on a page. But in healthcare, we can't actually control a lot of that. And some of the data that we gather is kind of downstream of implicit biases in how medicine is practiced, different incentives that are at play, like certain codes are more favorable to be coded for, and that may send you down a rabbit hole. There's a lot of opportunities for kind of making incorrect assumptions. I can give you one example of this from some of the work we did at Amgen. We built machine learning models to predict COVID mortality. We were working with the Optum de-identified EHR data set during COVID. And we were doing this kind of predictive modeling. And one of the team members said, I have a 98% accuracy rate on this model predict COVID mortality. And I was like, okay, well, what's the feature that's most predicting the outcome? It was sepsis in the last week. Okay, well, like if you have sepsis, it's going to increase your risk of mortality, right? Like that is obvious. That is not something new. We're not learning new information on your predictive risk factors. But from a purely mathematical perspective, yeah, if you have sepsis, it's going to increase your risk of mortality. So I think there's sort of like this kind of inherent challenge at play between when you have domain background, you'll be able to kind of like see those kinds of patterns, like 98% accuracy. That seems off. That seems a little bit too good. It's sepsis. Okay, like then we're just kind of, it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will. But on the other hand, you can bring like really interesting and exciting approaches that come from very different domains if you're coming from an AI background in another field.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's like a great example of you can't just trust the output without understanding the input as well, right? So it's like I think you hear this all the time now where AI, like what are you training the AI on? What data are you training the AI on? And then there's just even like now I think you have this point where we're getting agents that are going to be interacting directly with patients on behalf of the provider potentially, or even like with the provider's kind of coordination or however you want to call it. How do we make sure that those agents are providing the right advice ultimately? to the patient, right? Do you have any insight into that? Like, is there a thing where it's like every single thing has to be filtered through the provider, which I feel like that's not going to save any that's not going to save any time for the provider. That's just going to add another administrative thing, right? So you almost have to like solve for that. What are your thoughts on like AI assisted medical advice or integrating that at the point of care?
I mean, I think we're seeing a lot more market adoption and excitement where it is like a clinician in the loop. And the reason is because it's assistive. Like, I think the analogy is what we in the software space are experiencing with AI assisted coding, clinicians are experiencing with scribes and other tools like that. And it's, we're hearing the results and we're hearing from the evidence that it's actually reducing, physician burnout. It's improving things, which is amazing. That it's just amazing, to be honest with you. I think where it becomes, and that's a situation where the human loop makes sense. Like, and similarly to AI coding, I see what Cursor or Claude is doing, and I can intervene if I don't agree. Similarly, in the physician assisted sort of AI space, like I think you're getting that similar effect. When you're then putting like an agent in front of a patient, I think that's where it'll be really interesting to kind of see how the guardrails are established. I think there's a couple of different manners. Like, I think you have to kind of balance between if you make your patient facing agent like too restrictive, it kind of defeats the point and it kind of feels impersonal. And I might as well just like literally enter like a GUI interface and like, what are we doing here? And then the other hand, if you're having a patient interact with an agent that's like highly dynamic and adaptable and can provide actual medical advice, then that's obviously high risk. I think one of the challenges is going to really come down to, and I know there's a few folks that I follow have kind of called this out, that it's really going to come down to like what the courts say, I think, to be just like super frank about it, because I think like the reality is people are already going to AI for medical advice, right? Like this is
Mhm.
already happening. So the question is
Yeah.
like, maybe the approach we should have as an industry is like risk mitigation. I don't know the right answer here. I think one of the big blockers is going to be the law and like where the law goes, because I think that's going to be that kind of the edge of how far you can take it. I think we're still kind of exploring that, but I think there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of ways also to kind of like control the behavior. I think the more that we can characterize these systems like in the wild and run experiments with it, the more that we can learn from it. I don't know. I don't know. It's like a totally new frontier.
Yeah, that's interesting. You feel like kind of part of it is that the genie is out of the bottle already, kind of. So like
Kinda.
we can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like
Yeah.
you can't stop somebody from just going like I do this. Fortunately, unfortunately, like I do this all the time. I'll take my kids like medical records and like lab results, and I'll just dump them in ChatGPT, and I'll have them like explain to me what's going on, right?
But yeah, that's what
Uh,
a lot of people are doing.
Yeah. And it's like there's no AI in my chart that like I can click on and say, okay, now provide me additional results because EHRs are they're a legacy software. But like if they did, maybe I wouldn't have done that. So I don't know if they're planning to do that. But yeah, okay. So let's
I would
move.
say, oh, I
Yeah,
wanted to add one
yeah.
more point on this, not from a healthcare perspective, but from like a general AI software perspective. Something I have noticed as a consumer of like a variety of different AI tools is I do kind of sometimes prefer the directly embedded AI software in like a given point solution, whether that's like a CRM or Gmail or something like that, because if I'm just going to use Claude in a vacuum, I'll end up needing to provide so much additional context to be like, read the docs, and then here's the website, and then here's the assumptions. That sometimes depends on the company. A very well vertically integrated point solution with like AI on it can actually be more of a better consumer experience because the developer of that application has already baked in all the context that's needed, and they've basically made a more like customized AI solution that should in theory actually have better results than if I like just gave it all to Claude, or at least like the trade-off of my time to make Claude that much more knowledgeable versus somebody else doing it for me. So that's just like the one kind of thing I think is promising for EHRs and other companies to be able to like AIify their products, is it actually can create a better experience because you know that the developers behind that are actually applying AI in a way that makes sense for their company.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that like something phenomenal is working on? Like, is that a I don't you don't have to reveal any
Oh, you
secret
know,
or anything, but is that
we're
like,
an open
are you,
book.
are you trying to, is that the direction you guys are trying to go, or are you?
We're a developer first healthcare AI platform. So we enable companies, specifically healthcare developers, healthcare technology teams, to build AI powered workflows and agents. So yeah, we are, our software can be used to achieve those kinds of use cases and make it easier. So we're essentially like picks and shovels for healthcare AI is what we're focused on.
Awesome. Yeah, so check out Phenomenal if you want to build an agent that you can call from my chart. Epic. Hello. So anyway, technical question for you. I know we've heard a lot about model context protocol as being kind of like the solution for a lot of problems. And so what I've heard is it's at first it was like, yeah, model context protocol is it, and so now every AI has to use model context protocol if you want to do it properly, let's say, or whatever. And then also we see the agent to agent. I don't know if you probably can explain it better than I can. The agent framework that Google has, which is basically like once you teach your AI to understand the APIs with MCP, you can now have different agents that interact together to achieve some results. What is your take on these technologies and frameworks? Are they kind of getting to a point where that they're going to be the standard for how things are done, or are you thinking it's still kind of to be determined?
Oh my God, this is like, I wish we had like an hour. So I held a course with Polyus like a month ago on MCP and A to A, and we built agents, and I talked through MCP, and we built clinical trials MCP server, and showed how you could also integrate it with clinicaltrials.gov, and also showed how you could build an agent using just like normal vanilla function calling for similar effects with clinicaltrials.gov. In the HL7 course we had last week, I talked about MCP and A to A. So I have a lot of thoughts here. I am a big fan of MCP. I think it's very, very elegant. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think the adoption is extremely strong on the server side, which is very promising for general adoption. I have a couple of current concerns which are becoming alleviated over time. A couple of the concerns. One is we have a lot of servers and we don't have many clients. And so if you want to, the value prop of MCP is interoperability, given you have an MCP client that supports that. And so we have like a small set of MCP clients. It's growing every day, which is wonderful. But the reality is today, if you actually want to get the whole value of an MCP server, you need to have an MCP client. So if your plan is to make your entire software kind of with Claude Desktop as the front end, then MCP is really valuable for you. But if you're a different kind of company and you don't necessarily want that, that may not be as desirable. I think there's a lot of opportunities for MCP in the developer tools sort of space as part of developer workflows. It's like I have a Todoist MCP server I use for myself that I integrate into Cloud Desktop. I think the patterns are really elegant and well designed, but like fundamentally there's lack of clients, which means you have like sort of this supply demand curve is off. And that's because most of the MCP servers that are on the market are really designed towards developers that are using them in part of their cursor workflow. That's like where a lot of the initial adoption came from. So that's point one. My second concern, so basically my point one is it's a concern, but it's kind of getting alleviated. The more that there's more adoption, it's kind of a virtuous cycle. We'll get more clients. So that's great. My concern number two is reliability. So I think for folks that are actually working with MCP, and this isn't like throwing shade to MCP necessarily, this is more of like a fundamental aspect of working with LLMs, is if you're working, and this is specifically as it applies to FHIR, or anything that works with a terminology system where you have alphanumeric codes that do not follow a standard pattern that LLMs have been trained upon. Something that I think many folks don't realize is that because of how LLMs are trained, it's next token prediction effectively, right? And while in the aggregate, if you're looking at very common conditions, you will see LLMs generate valid FHIR. And it's going to be generating the valid code because it's a code that probably has occurred in the broader set of corpus of information it's been trained on. So you'll get lucky. Like you'll for sure, lucky is the wrong word, but like it'll work. But if you start to then want to apply it to much more obscure codes, changes in ARC's norm, changes in SNOMED, changes in LOINC, like in the freaking medical terminology system, we're always making these updates. We always have new drugs on the market. We always have a shift in the coding systems every couple of years, depending on the coding system. And so like, unless you're literally training an LLM on those coding systems, or you were taking a RAG-based approach, which is what we do, to be able to extract the codes that are detected as the embeddings being similar, you will have LLMs hallucinate fire. So as it relates to specifically fire and reliability there, that's like a major concern I have. And we've done benchmarking testing on direct LLM usage to generate fire, and you don't see the accuracy really wavers between like 40 and 60%. And that's if you don't apply sort of like a much more controlled approach. So that reliability piece, it's easy to say, oh, I put an MCP server and I'm good, but it really comes down to like how the spec is designed of the API that you're integrating into, and then what kind of context are you supplying that specific MCP server so that it knows if given this information, I should make this kind of call. I think that's like, I think the necessity to provide that kind of context is good. It's going to lead people to be more communicative. It's going to lead developers to design better designed APIs. It's going to lead to a lot of really great things, but I just think that's like a call out that I have as it applies to MCP is the hallucination piece. And then the other piece is security and authentication. And authorization. And I think that's the part that a lot of us in the field have been really like looking to the folks adopting MCP to continue to enhance. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really exciting time. I was like, when MCP came out, I honestly, like earlier in the year, I was like, maybe we should build the entire platform all native on MCP. But honestly, one of the reasons I kind of like kicked the can down the road was the MCP client support wasn't there. And so I was like, I'm not sure it's the right time. But now, we're building out MCP support for our APIs. Like, it's obviously where I think the field is going. Yeah, I could literally talk about it like all day long. But yeah, I'm really glad though that Anthropic did take the leadership position in establishing it. And I think when OpenAI said they'll adopt MCP and Gemini did this, Google did the same with Gemini, I was like, okay, unless somebody comes up with a better standard at this point, we probably are going to see strong adoption here. So I think if I had to put money on it, I was a betting person, I would bet on MCP.
Okay, got it. How much would you bet? No, I'm just kidding. Would you bet like $1, or is it like
No,
$100?
I would place a
Um,
significant bet on it. I think I would
yeah,
just want to think about like when I thought that payoff would happen,
yeah.
probably.
Awesome. All right. Well, that was really awesome. I like to hear about that from experts, people that really understand it, because I think there's also a lot of like hype, which is, in any like cycle, which I think we're in the hype cycle for AI. Like, so all this stuff is like right now, it's Y2K, all over again. But like, there's a lot of real innovation happening, I think. And that's like, I think MCP is a very important one. And then the client situation, can you explain that to be like a little better, like on five? Is just like a limit of how many ways you could call MCP servers? Is it like, I know you can do it from your Claude desktop, but let's say you have your own platform and you want to call basically any LLM of choice, and then you want it to utilize MCP. How difficult is that? I don't know if it can be explained, but like,
I mean, I think there's a couple of different elements that you need to implement if you want to build your own MCP client, if you will. There are ways to like accelerate it, like Google Agent Development Kit, for example. They've said in their documentation that their agents that are built on ADK are MCP clients. So I haven't gone deep enough into their docs to like fully understand what everything that they implemented there, but that's an opportunity where like you can seamlessly invoke an MCP server from Google ADK. That's nice. Like that was actually a really good move on their part because it does make it a bit easier to get that value prop of the portability. Do you think like fundamentally though, if you look at, and it's been a couple of weeks since I looked at the latest run of like MCP clients out there. The last time I looked, it had increased. It went up a lot. That's great. But really, for a while there, it was basically Cursor and Claude Desktop. And that was it.
right,
And
right.
so then who gets value from having MCP servers? Someone who is focused on their user interface being Claude Desktop or Cursor. Just like that's sort of my TLDR there. I mean, obviously folks might sort of like disagree with me there, but that's my observation. And so for me, like, why do I like MCP servers in my like own sort of personal experience, either with like Claude Desktop or with Cursor? It's kind of nice because you're like, cool, I don't have to build a bunch of code to then invoke a bunch of APIs myself. Like I do get benefits to like adopting what somebody else figured out So for example, like my Todoist example, for example, or Gmail, there's Gmail tools, there are Google Calendar tools in Claude. Those are basically, I believe those are MCP servers for like Google Calendar and Gmail. That's really nice. Like, I don't have to do that. Cool. I'm so happy. Like, I don't have to build my own LLM integrations into Gmail. I'm delighted. Somebody
Yeah.
else figured it out, but that's for me as like a consumer. I think if I was building it, that kind of integration, I guess sort of like when I've worked with MCP servers and have contemplated adding them into like an agent that we were building for a hackathon or something like that, the trade-off is like sometimes the way that somebody built that MCP server isn't exactly the way like I would use that API. For example, like clinicaltrials.gov, I made a ct.gov MCP server for this course we did like a month ago. And then I also did it using function calling through Vertex. And it kind of was like the same. I was like, well, maybe somebody might want my MCP server for ct.gov and maybe they'd want to incorporate it into their product. But like, me as the MCP server developer, I made some certain assumptions for my specific use case that I wanted. So there's kind of this like, there's this tension between, if I put myself in the shoes of the MCP server developer, there's this tension between building something that's very use case specific. Like, I intend to use this ct.gov MCP server to help patients find trials. And if I then release my MCP server for that purpose, then developers can use my MCP server in that manner. But then the way most folks are building MCP servers is they're taking the API spec and then they're directly making it like an MCP server. But then at that point, like, I don't know, I guess maybe the way I build, I would want some sort of like middle ground there. I think would be pretty powerful. Like, I think the middle ground would be for these core set of use cases, these are the MCP servers to address those things versus like a gigantic, the entire API spec of ct.gov. Like, I'm not going to do all of the searches for my use case. I think the reason why I get anxious about that edge of it is then when I expose all of those like endpoints to my LLM, I'm going to then have to worry about reliability. Is it going to call the right endpoint? Like that's what I see in practice is like, I would almost rather a little bit more control to ensure that when I give it like a request, it's going to actually search for those trials, for focusing more on the MCP server part. But I guess like my point there is, I think the tension is how folks are building MCP servers and how much they're actually helping people's use cases and workflows. And on the MCP client side, that's more about like, how easy is it for me to actually take somebody's MCP server off the shelf and stick it in my application? That's sort of what I think about. And right now, most of your options are like Cursor, Cloud Desktop, or now ADK. And I think it also requires a lot more knowledge to think through, like, how do I ensure when I get this kind of request, I will reliably call these specific endpoints for these specific use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was fun. Like a couple of months ago, I think I put up, I just vibe coded this MCP server with Fire. Like, I think I was probably one of 20 people that did the same thing literally like that same week. But here, go give me a natural language query and it translated that into a Firepath expression. That was just amazing to see that because I could literally build that in like 2 hours or whatever with any one of these agents. Any fun stories you want to share overall with starting Phenomenal, and any learnings you have maybe for other people that want to start their own companies or things?
The hardest thing I've ever done, for sure. It's been extremely rewarding. The week before, we had this HL7 course. We had like 60 people there. We had all these people from like all these different backgrounds, really passionate about healthcare, want to make an impact, want to like, use what Fire is designed for to make a difference. And it's just really like honestly surreal to get to work with all these people and to build agents with them, and then to get them to they got to experience how AI can actually work to solve real workflows that we care about in healthcare. I think something I've discovered through starting a company is how much like a core thread throughout my career has been kind of like two things. I've forever been obsessed with how you can quantify human health and biology, like forever. Like since I was in high school, I've been obsessed. And then the other part that has been extremely motivating to me, particularly since grad school, I think, is the people that choose to work in healthcare technology were nerds that want to make a difference a lot of the time, right? Like you could choose to be in other industries, but you're choosing to be in healthcare. why would you do this to yourself if you weren't trying to make an impact? Like why would you suffer through trying to figure out if tools are going to be fire compliant or not, or HIPAA compliant or not, or like are going to work in this setting? Why would you do that to yourself unless if you want as a developer? Like there's a lot of jobs you can have, but the people that I've met and worked with in my career in healthcare, they are in healthcare for a reason. And that is something that I think I've really like sort of fully absorbed, especially since starting the company and focusing in this space. Is like I just feel extremely fortunate to get to spend my time on this and to help people that are that's why they get up in the morning. Like if you want to study, I don't know, like for yourself, like you're in this space, like you could have gone into other industries, like you chose to be in healthcare. And so that's what keeps me going. I feel extremely fortunate to get to be spending my time and my life on this.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's a really great way to put it. That like it is very fulfilling in the way that I guess any job can be fulfilling when you are successful and you can make a difference. But I feel like in healthcare, it is also very personal in a way like other industries are just not, right? Like, so I think that's a great point, and I think personally, like, I think a lot of people have their personal stories that, influence why they're doing what they're doing and the passion that they bring to trying to make things better. So kudos to you. I feel like we need more people doing it out of the goodness of it, for the greater good and less for the financial uh, side of it.
I mean, you can achieve
Yeah.
both. There's kind of a
Yeah.
unique industry. It can be it is a market where you can build a venture backed company
Yeah.
that can achieve venture backed outcomes. Like it is an industry that has those effects. Like it's a huge part of our economy. It's a huge part of the world economy. So from a financial perspective, there's a lot of that there. But I think
Right.
that like it also is there's a lot of other parts of the economy that are like that. There are a lot of other kind of career paths that you can go down that are also like very that make sense from a startup perspective. And so yeah, I think that anyway, I would say just I'm very fortunate to get to work with people that I get to work with.
That's great. Okay. This has been awesome. Anything else you want to share with listeners? I guess maybe to keep it more related to fire, but like anything to look forward to, or like what are you excited about in the near future?
Well, I think that there's been such an upswell of unique fire content in particular in the past year that I honestly hadn't seen in a number of years. I don't know if you feel the same way, but like I've been making YouTube videos on our channel for a while now. And obviously we focus on, developer tools that are designed to support folks that are working in fire with and so obviously we make content that's about that. And it's really cool to see people like watch our videos and respond, or like you post on LinkedIn, or I'm seeing all these like folks in the space like yourself and others chatting about fire, chatting about AI. And it's just like a lot more energy in the space than I think I've seen in a number of years, maybe since 21. We had a big like rah fire time, I feel. And then it kind of calmed down a bit. At least that's my observation, but it feels very special now. I think that there's like the community is really wonderful. I'm so like grateful to get to work with the HL7 folks. I feel like we've made so much progress in the past number of years. And then with all of the announcements from like CMS last week, it's like we're getting kind of like ramped up on the fire train is off.
Yeah.
No. It's a very exciting time, I think, in the fire space in particular.
That's great. What's the name of your YouTube channel?
Oh, it's phenomenal. Phenomenal dev.
Okay.
Yeah. I got to do more
So
content. I've been kind of like out of it, doing mostly like courses and stuff, but I'm going to start making more videos again.
yeah. Yeah, you gotta get out there, and you know what? It's fun, right? It's fun. I think that's one thing, like, we as, like, fire is, like, very serious a lot of times, and it's like, we can make it fun, right? Like, and
I
just
want
have
to do a
conversation.
Twitch. I want to do like a Twitch stream at some point, and then just
Uh,
like making agents with different fire
let's
APIs or something. I
let's
don't know.
do
Like
it,
who will
actually.
attend that? I don't know.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I've actually talked to some people that we wanna do, like, a live vibe coding, like, with some really smart, like, fire devs, fire engineers, all, like, trying to, like, vibe code
Okay.
something live, like, and then,
Okay.
like, share that. So if you're up for it, like,
Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's do it
that
on
would be really
Twitch.
cool. Yeah, let's do it on Twitch or Discord. I think Discord's the other one too.
Yeah.
You can have, like, X number of people and sharing their screens and all kind of stuff. So awesome. Well, thank you, Kerry, for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'll have to go check out your videos and
Anytime.
learn more about Phenomenal. Doubled or tripled my knowledge of MCP, by the way.
Cool.
Definitely. I feel more knowledgeable now about AI in general.
Oh, thank you.